just get started with introductions. So I am Anna Jeffries. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Licking County Board of Developmental Disabilities. Before I came to the county board in 2016, I was a reporter for a newspaper in Newark, Ohio for about 8 years and did a lot of writing and reporting 4 years before that. So I jokingly say that I'm a recovering journalist because I think once you're in journalism, it never really completely leaves your soul. But also have a lot of friends, a lot of love and passion and just value for that field. And I try to run my department very similarly to a journalistic organization in the way that I communicate and the way that I organize things. I also still feel very strongly about Oxford commas. So if you're somebody that feels strongly about that and wants to find me at the happy hour, we can talk about that. But I'll let these awesome ladies introduce themselves as well.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lisa Burt, and I'm an accreditation manager, and I'm here to say yes, what she says, okay? All right, I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay. And hi, I'm Kelly Ferenbaugh, also with DODD, and I am a regional support facilitator. And I'm also here to say, yes, what she said and what she said. So
I feel so supported.
Yeah, she's very supported today.
All right, so do you guys want to kick us off, kind of start us on this journey?
Happily. So I wanted to be a part of this presentation because many times, have you guys been through the accreditation review? Have you struggled through it with stress and strain? Do you worry about what you've written? Was it enough? Are they going to find whatever? Okay, that's not the purpose of writing an ISP. It's not. If you have met with an individual and their family, you've listened to them carefully, you've done an assessment, and you write down what they say, defend it like it's your child. Okay? Because that is the work you're charged with doing. You guys do some awesome stuff. Do you make mistakes here and there? Yep. Do we see those mistakes and sometimes document them? Yeah. It doesn't make you feel good, but the point of what you're doing is to listen, assess, plan, and monitor. I mean, you guys are really good at it. I mean, when I'm talking to you, I can hear the joy and the conversation that you have. When I ask people, the favorite part of the job is working with people. So what we're looking for is that you do just that. And I think what Anna has to say today is going to help you figure out ways when you feel like you're stuck trying to ask people questions, when you feel like you're stuck trying to get families to come with you to this side and say, hey, he's an adult now, maybe we could treat him a little differently here and there. She's going to have some good points for you today. And yeah, we're going to be okay with that. If we're not, you're going to act like a bear, rawr, and, you know, hit us with your claw. I mean, seriously, that's the work we're here to do. We don't always get it right. You don't always get it right. But we have to work together to ensure that services are delivered in the way that it's meant to individuals that we support. Welcome to our session.
Anything else you want to add?
You want me to add more?
No, I'm good. Just didn't want to switch on you. So before I start, and I guess I'll just say, I always joke that I'm better on paper. So I'm going to try really hard for all of you to be good in person too. But I just want to be honest that I don't write ISPs for a living. That's not my skill set. That's not something that I have a lot of experience for. And it didn't feel right to come here, even though I will share some stories about things that worked for me from a journalistic standpoint and a writer standpoint. It didn't feel right for me to not talk to some people who do this every day. And I went into those conversations with some of the SSAs at our county board, who we call them service coordinators. So if I switch them back and forth, that's why. I started out with a lot of respect for all the work that you guys do. And then talking to those SSAs, reading some of the plans that they're really proud of, it just heightened the respect that I have for all of you guys and the work that you do, because it is hard. And those ISPs are intense. So I just want to thank all of you guys for what you do, and especially for the 3 ladies that are some of our ISP rock stars who gave me a lot of awesome feedback and a lot of really just quality time talking through some of this stuff. So if you ever get to work with Amanda Brem, Rachel Harper, or Hannah Goodwin, they gave me a ton of examples and helped me make up a lot of the stories that I'm going to share here today. So shout out to them. Wait, lost it. There it is. See, better on paper, guys. So I kind of broke this down into the steps that I take and still take when I am working to create something about a person that we support. So the first step for me in my job previously and now is always the interview. And I think, you know, for you guys, that is built into your process, right? You're doing that discovery, you're having those conversations with people. You are built-in interviewers because of that part of what you do, writing those plans. And one of the things that the SSAs at our county board shared with me was it is important to ask really good questions, but it's also important to kind of focus on what you're not asking and what you're seeing around you. So taking time to observe that person, even if they're in your office setting, and kind of just taking time to see, okay, well, what is important to this person? I mean, if somebody walks in to your office head to toe in Buckeye gear, you probably know their favorite sports team. You might not need to ask that. So what jumping off point does that create for you? If you go to someone's house and they, you know, are only looking at their dog, or if they show you their bedroom and it's painted purple, you know, how do those things that you're observing elevate that conversation and make it even stronger? Because I think when we go through that list of questions and make sure we're checking all the boxes, I think there's things that get mixed, but when we have a conversation that flows, I mean, that's always how I've seen a good interview to be, as a conversation. You know, I want to be hearing what you're saying, but also I want it to flow. I don't want it to feel really formal and stiff, like I'm ticking down a list. In journalism school, one of the things they teach you right away is to not ask questions that can be answered yes or no, because then that's kind of the end of the sentence, right? If you ask somebody a question and they answer yes. So kind of making sure you're asking those open-ended questions, you know, looking at maybe phrasing things in a way that's like, what's an example of that? Or a lot of times I'll say to people, what does that diagnosis look like for you? Like, what are the challenges and what do they look like for you? So that gives people or their family members the chance to talk about kind of their personalized experience. Another thing that I try to do, and especially, I think this is especially important in our field, is kind of echoing back what that person is saying. So, you know, did I hear that right? Or what I'm getting from you is this. Is that right? Am I on track here? Like, help me make sure I'm reflecting back what you've said to me. And I think that's really important because we do talk to people who maybe have different ways of communicating. Maybe their speech isn't always as easy to understand as typical speech. So I think it's really respectful to make sure that we're taking the time to make that person feel heard. And I think it also just shows like you were really listening to what they were saying. You know, one of the things that I've always felt is I'd rather have a really quality interview and maybe have to ask a follow-up question or two later than try to rush through all my questions and not get really good responses. So if you have to follow up with somebody, you might just find out something else that you didn't know before, and you also could get a lot more information than you had previously. It's just another opportunity to talk to someone and kind of solidify the relationship. And this is probably one of my favorite tips because this is something that got drilled into me very early and it has never, ever led me astray. And it's just that when I'm done talking to somebody, when I'm done with every interview I've ever done, the last question that I always ask is there anything else that you want to tell me? Is there anything else that you want to say? And I guarantee you that you will probably get some of your best stuff in that moment after you open that question up, because it really gives people the opportunity to just share something about themselves that maybe they're feeling or maybe they're proud of that they really didn't know how to fit in somewhere else. It kind of makes people think like, oh, do I have anything else I want to say? Like, that space at the end really does allow people to share really good information, and it also empowers them because they kind of get to end the story on their terms. Like they get to end that interview talking about themselves, which I think is really cool. Keep losing this. There we go. Your turn.
We're going to take a quick look. Assessment. Well, I think that's what you kind of talked about just a moment ago, is when you're doing that assessment. And because of the kinds of work that I do on a regular basis, I talk to people all the time, and I'm asking questions, and I'm looking at folks, and I'm asking, hey, I see you drink Coke. I love Coke, except I like Coke Zero. You ever drink that? It's a good drink. And that's what I would normally do. And I'm going to start that conversation, but I'm asking those assessment questions. I'm going to ask Kelly to just talk about person-centered assessment for a second.
Okay. Well, when we were all chatting to kind of prepare for this session, one of the things that we also talked about is I always kind of feel like this is where we should all live, right? We all kind of live in assessment. We live in, let's have those conversations about how things are going. That whole, I love that you said the whole, you might not get everything in one sit down. And quite honestly, how many of you have had that sit down and people let you know they are done? It is time to be done. Let's not continue to sit here because then we're wasting each other's time, right? And so recognizing, so I think to me, that's what I want to call out around that person-centered planning aspect, is really looking at what makes sense for each individual person. So is it coming to the office and let's sit down together and let's have the big meeting because the person loves the big meeting? You know, folks that love the big meeting? Do you know folks that hate the big meeting and actually do everything they can to never go to the big meeting? So I'm sure all of you know this, but it's really about what makes sense for each person. And if that means it's the phone call conversation for a little while, then we do that. If that means it's the coffee shop that they love, then we do that. And I do want to go ahead and jump into that next one, the who has the power. This one to me is really important. It's recognizing who holds the power in the place that you're meeting. Who holds the power when you have meetings in the county board meeting room? County boards, SSA. I know like lots have been held at even like a day program. So who holds the power? So think about the setting. Who's in charge in that setting? And then also think about in the conversation. So I think I love the final question that you said, like, is there anything else that you want to add? Anything else you want to share? That is making sure that the person has the power in that conversation. And the last thing I'll say about this is I will never forget, I was doing some work in Northeast Ohio several years ago. And it was an SSA supervisor who was talking about their first experiences as an SSA. And one of the things that he told me was he was meeting with a gentleman and everyone had warned him ahead of time, oh, he's a talker. Keep him on track, right? He's a talker. You're going to have to redirect. So the SSA had a whole list of things that they had to talk about with this person on that given day. And the whole time it was this power struggle of let me get my stuff marked off of my list. And when it was all said and done, the SSA realized that he really learned nothing new about this person because the whole time he was focused on his own agenda and what he needed to learn and know to get his check boxes marked off. Whereas if they would have just had that natural conversation, probably could have checked most of them off and then maybe scheduled a second conversation. So I just wanted to call those out and really just in the context of who has the power, who holds the power, thinking about who's at the table. What do we talk about? Where does it happen? When does it happen? All of those things. So Lisa, was there anything, please?
One last thing, and this is something that we talk about and we talk about in roundtables, is when you're working with parents that you are really involved. I'm not going to call them difficult because I think as a person who has a loved one who receives care, I'm going to be whatever it needs to be to make sure that they are cared for. But when parents are talking for the individual and you seldom are getting information directly from that person, that's the time you want to set up a different scenario where you have an opportunity just to understand what their wants and needs are. I don't sit down and talk about my mom with sex ever. I don't want to. Okay, I never want to. So the idea of having that conversation about me wanting to be involved with someone else, or having a relationship or meeting some people that I might want to have an intimate relationship with is not something I want to discuss with her sitting there. Or maybe I have questions. You know, there are lots of individuals who's not sure what's happening all around. And they want to talk about it with someone, and maybe a counselor is appropriate. But again, having that conversation in front of your parent or your guardian or someone like that isn't necessarily the best place to have it. So we do want to be careful that we're hearing from them when we can, and that we're taking all opportunities to understand who they are. And I will also say one last thing is that individuals who are nonverbal do communicate differently than I do, but they communicate. So it's the eyes, it's the body language, it's the smile, it's the fidget. Those things can tell you a lot about people. Don't disregard them. Because a lot of people can say, hey, you can ask the staff or the parent, hey, when she smiles, what's she doing? What makes her smile? When she's upset, what does that look like? And what's happening at that point in time? So those are some good questions to ask, particularly during that assessment period. Okay, Anna.
All right, so now we've done our interview, we've gotten our information, and we're kind of getting into that mindset to write something. And Lisa and Kelly, I think, are going to talk about this next, and I know they're going to go into detail a lot, but so I won't really talk about it too much. But just every time I sit down and write something, the first thing I always think about is, who am I writing this for? Who's going to read it? Who is my audience? And how do I create something that is going to best meet the needs or the interest of that audience? And as we write plans and we want that to be a reflection of the person that the plan is about, I think a big thing is to make sure that they are recognizing themselves in that plan. And a lot of that is using their words. So if somebody is using, identity first language, we want them to be able to see that reflected back to them in their plan. One of the SSAs that I kind of talked through some of this stuff with said that she has a young lady that she works with who is in college. So she's studying human services. That's her goal, to get that degree. So when they have a conversation, she uses really technical language to talk about herself and what she wants and what she's doing. So she reflects that in her plan because that's an important part of that young lady's life. But somebody that doesn't have that experience, they wouldn't recognize themselves in that plan, in those words. So we really want to make sure that, someone can recognize themselves in what we're writing. Reflecting back pronouns, names that people use. I know from a Medicaid billing level, that gets a little sticky, but I think just always making sure that we are referring to people the way they ask us to refer to them, that we see them and we see who they are in their full humanity. And also being aware of reading level, which this is something I struggle with. There are tools on the internet that you can use when you write something to determine what reading level it is at. I ran something through this readabilityformulas.com that I had written for our website. And as you can see, I have some work to do on my reading level because it is for 10th graders, ages 14 to 15 years old. So I don't think I'm really serving the people that we support very well by writing something like that. And honestly, I don't know if I'm supporting our community very well by writing something like that. So making sure that it's readable, making sure that the words we're using are at that reading level, that somebody would understand and see themselves in that plan. One of the things that I loved that a lot of our SSAs shared with me was that when they go in and start trying to write, they really think about, what if someone was writing my ISP? And we kind of joked about there's a lot of days where if someone was writing our ISP, it would be a very unflattering portrait of us because, life is crazy and we have small children. But one of the things I learned as a journalist, you know, I had to do a lot of stories involving people in crisis situations, people who were going through some pretty rough stuff. And I oftentimes found myself either talking to them about one of the worst days of their lives or actually physically being there on the worst day of their life, which is tough to know how to navigate. And I think one of the things I had to learn really quickly is that the things that people were doing in those moments, that's not them. You know, people aren't their worst days. They aren't their worst experience. And I think we, being a trauma-informed system, we know that. But I think when we think about writing that ISP, you know, making sure that we aren't portraying somebody's worst day or worst mistake or worst situation and making it feel like that's who they are, because we know that we're all complex humans who have bad days and make choices that maybe aren't always the best. So just kind of keeping that in mind, you know, what would you want to read about yourself, or what would you want to read about your son or daughter or your loved one? I think that that's something that I think about a lot.
So when we talk about the service plan and writing information into the service plan, who's the audience? Who are we writing it for? You guys know, just shout it out. Who are we writing it for? Individual? Provider. Okay, and can we be more specific in the provider world? The DSP. So we take that 60-page book and we write a lot in there, right? We put a lot of information in there, but we have to think about what information do we need to put in there, okay? And what words do we need to use? When I started in the field, ISPs said things like, Lisa can ambulate independently. And being new to the field, I was like, ambulance? I don't need an ambulance. They said, no, we're talking about, you know, you're able to walk. And I go, why don't you just say walk? It was so confusing. So I'm imagining an individual picking up their life story in the ISP and trying to read through it. And if they could recognize any of the things that they've said in that document. And most of the time they can't, because it's written in a way that's very formal. And I talked to an SSA once and I said, hey, you know, maybe you guys could write simply. And they said, we did. Our supervisor changed it because we were having an accreditation review. And I thought, oh, that one didn't work. But you know, what we want to do is just write in very simple language. One, so the individual can read it and make sure that that's what they wanted to say. And two, so the DSP can pick it up and understand it. They may not have the professional lingo that we have. They don't need to know the professional lingo. They need to know what the person wants. And we all need to come to some agreement with the words on the page that that's what it means. Because sometimes when we use fancy pants language, we don't exactly end up getting the service that we expect, because we all came away with two different definitions, all right? And so that's really a critical part. And I'm gonna turn it over to Kelly to add to that.
Sure. I have a really important question though first. Do you all laugh at Lisa because she's funny, or because you know you're gonna see her at least once every 3 years? Both? Yes? I think you're funny, Lisa. I'm sorry. She is funny. I'm sorry. I had to get my own laugh. I was getting a little jealous. So, all right. So I just want to share with you an experience that I had recently. Somebody came into my life early this year that I feel absolutely privileged to have been introduced to. Thanks to the broad scope of the learning community. It was a gentleman living in Ohio, kind of struggling. He's had a really fantastic life, but right now, maybe not so much. But anyway, long story short, and I remember when he got his letter from a county board, letting him know, like welcoming him and letting him know who his SSA was going to be. This gentleman is in his 60s and he is unable to read. He does read some words, but mostly, you know, kind of short. He needs some short sentences. And he called me because he got a letter and he thought it was the letter he'd been waiting on. And I was on the phone with him for over an hour while he spelled every single word in that letter, and I attempted to help him understand what the county board was trying to communicate with him. It was awful. And then I thought, oh my goodness, and this county board, they are wonderful. I know they support people in an amazing way. They are very person-centered, but this is this person's introduction to our system, is we just sent you a letter that you absolutely have no idea how to read. And quite honestly, there were words that I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think it means this. He ended up taking a picture and sending it to me so that we could decipher it together. But I share that with you because that is so important. So, because even if we're talking about the person receiving services, the DSP, whomever, we want anybody who picks this up that needs to know what's in it, to be able to understand it right away in an instant and do what it says they're supposed to do. And so I know I hear a lot of things about people saying, oh, hi, ISP, it's so long. Oh my goodness, right? Well, you're in charge of that. So it's going to look different for every single person that you meet. So if this person has a lot of needs, you might have a lot of words. So they better be simple and to the point. This person has a few needs. Maybe there are just a few words. But I will tell you, one of my favorite things that I started doing recently is if you use Word, Adobe, whatever it might be, you can use the screen reader. Anybody ever tried the accessibility features in Word? They're amazing. Listen to what you've written. So turn on the screen reader and have it read to you what you've just written. And chances are you just wrote a run-on sentence that tells somebody nothing, that's about 45 words long. Because I do it all the time. So there's my tip for you after getting on a little bit of a soapbox, but I really, truly listen to what you've written. Because if it sounds like, oh, wow, that was really interesting. And yes, I absolutely do see that person. And that person absolutely will recognize themselves in what's here on this paper, then awesome. So thanks for letting me soapbox for just a minute. Was there anything else, Lisa, that we were supposed to talk about on this one? Pass it back.
All right. So as a journalist, quotes are one of my favorite things. Because I just think they tell you so much about somebody and they humanize people in ways that sometimes words can't. One of the quotes that I read in an ISP that I loved, one of our SSAs wrote that somebody told her that like she was the mom of her group of friends. And like instantly I know who that girl is, right? Like I am that girl. I'm the mom of my group of friends. Like I know I'm trying to herd the cats. I want to know when people have had snacks. Like, is anybody hangry here? Like I know that girl. So to me, that quote said so much more than a paragraph could have ever said. So I guess I would just encourage you guys, and I think that these guys are totally on board too, that if someone gives you an amazing quote, or even just a simple quote that says a lot about them, like it's okay to put that in their plan. The thing we do need to watch out for though is making sure we are directly quoting somebody when they actually said the thing. And also we want to make sure that we only use like I or me in a direct quote, right? Because you don't want to say, you don't want to write things in third person that are supposed to be in third person in I or me, because it's not the person actually saying that. But I just think that quotes can be really powerful. And it saves you guys some work, because if you take a good note on what somebody said, then that can usually stand alone. Another thing that you learn as a journalist pretty early is people get pretty annoyed with you in journalism school when you get really flowery about certain things. I had a professor that used to get really mad when we would write that someone passed away. He would just be like, that person died, which is, he was old and crusty and, just kind of a stickler for that kind of stuff. But I do remember one of my good friends, we were in our college newspaper and someone wrote a story about somebody like in poverty. And she said, like you're really you're using all these euphemisms. You just got to say they're poor. And it was like, oh, college, right? So, but I think there's some truth to that. Like using euphemisms and trying to write around certain things, like we need to make sure that we're telling the truth and that we're being factual, especially about people's challenges, because it doesn't do anybody any good if we kind of gloss over something that is something they might really need support with. But I think the balance there is, and this kind of came from a lot of the SSAs I talked to, was just you know, the thing that drives them crazy when they read plans is when they see things that you just start off immediately saying like, this person can't. Like, I think one of them said she read an ISP once that said like, this person will never work in the community. And it was on like the front page. So I think just, and that, yeah, I think that's a very harsh example, but I do think that there's ways to talk about challenges while also talking about what people can do. I think also, you know, we want to make sure we're going for quality over quantity. That's something that I feel like I try to look at in my own writing and really trying to avoid redundancy. Like if I've said it first one way, I don't need to repeat it. I really try to look for words I've used before or just ways I've been redundant. And I also think that, especially when we're writing about other people and we really want to do a good job and create something good for them, it is easy to overthink and really get worried about, you know, instead of just saying something that's authentic and true, kind of worrying about if it's going to be perceived the wrong way. So sometimes getting caught up in that overthinking, like if you can try to just, you know, say the thing and move on, sometimes that's a good strategy for me. Sometimes I just try to sit there and think, okay, like, what am I trying to say? Like, if I'm struggling to write something and I'm struggling to start it, I just sit there and I say, what is the point of this? What do I want somebody to take away? Or just what do I want to say? And I think that really helps me not overthink. And then also people know when you copy paste, it's really bad when like you copy and paste something and it has the wrong name. Like I hate when I get letters like that. I get them a lot. So just, you know, trying not to copy paste, because I think if we really want people to be proud of the things that we write about them, like if they can tell we copied and pasted, it makes them feel crummy. And then I just strongly advise everyone to find somebody that can read their writing. The human brain is not wired to read your own stuff. Like it's not anything that, it's not a personal thing. It's just, that's not how we're made. And it's not how I'm made. I am very bad at writing typos and not seeing them. So I have a couple people in my office that I always send my stuff to before it goes out into the world to just check it over and make sure, you know, I've spelled words right. I didn't lop the end off of something. So if you have a caseload buddy or somebody in your department that you can talk to about this, I think I know everybody's busy, but I think taking that time to edit really does make a difference. All right, so this is my favorite thing. So I always say words matter. It's like one of the cool things about being a PIO is you can say that all the time. But when Lisa and I started talking about this, and she said, well, I want to do something about storytelling. But you kept using this phrase.
It was, I think, can you guys hear me? Yeah. I was telling Anna today that I saw she had some kind of stuff on her about storytelling, and I was like, and the stuff that she wrote about the power of telling a story, I was like, this is what, when you read an ISP, what we're lacking sometimes, right? Like we're not telling a story. We're just like, we're just literally like stating, I don't know, not even facts, but we're just kind of, and I kept saying to Anna, like, we really need to help people realize that, you know, we need to tell a story. We need to have capacity thinking, strength-based writing, telling the best day of somebody's life sometimes, and putting more emphasis there on some of the worst case, which of course, you know, and our system doesn't always do that. We just kind of document life. And really, as the plan authors, we have, this is an opportunity, a gift that we've been given, and it's overwhelming. But like, I did a session on the power of an introduction, right? Like, I want, when I'm thinking about my son, or in some of the clients that I've worked with in the past, I want somebody to read this first paragraph and think, wow, I want to know this person. Like, that's what I want. And so then I'm going to read more. And so she kept saying, what do you say?
What is this capacity thinking stuff? Like
strength-based writing? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I just kept saying the same words over and over again. And all of a sudden.
Yeah. So finally I said, oh, okay. So in journalism, we call that show don't tell. And that was kind of like the revelation, is that I kind of understood exactly what she wanted me to talk about, because I think that the right words and the right phrases, they can eliminate the need for entire paragraphs, and they can make a difference between something that falls flat and something that has soul and something that comes to life. I got to read some plans to get ready for this, and one of our SSAs wrote that somebody was a loving mom to her hamsters, which I'm obsessed with that, because I know who that is. Like, I know those hamsters have names. They might have costumes. Like, they probably eat better than me. They have the best hamster toy. Like, I don't need to spend a lot of time writing paragraphs about the minute details of how this woman takes care of her hamsters, because like, I see it. I know it paints that picture in my mind. That same SSA wrote that one of the people on her caseload is brilliant at math. You know, it's not like, oh, she is skilled in math, or she
has good math.
She has good, yeah, she's good with, she understands you know, whatever the case may be. Like, I can see her, she's got a book and she's knocking out those equations. And like, I don't need a long paragraph to tell me what I know in an instant just by reading that little phrase.
I always tell when I'm talking to SSAs, and people will sometimes question me and go, well, I don't know if she's really brilliant at math. Like, is she brilliant? Like, because I think we've been trained that we don't, you know, seriously. And I'm like, is it going to harm anything if we put that she's brilliant at math? I mean, I don't think so. I mean, if you say that she sucks at math, that may harm. That may be
that
harmful.
would be me.
But
that would be me.
You know, I don't know if she's brilliant at math. She's better than me, right? So therefore, she's brilliant. I mean, and that's my thing. Like, if you are saying something that boosts somebody's confidence, that, I mean, Chandra talked about it this morning, right? Like, when you envision a future that is a positive big thing, that gives power, and that's what we want. So if you're erring on the side of being a little dramatic in the fact that somebody is really great at something, they're brilliant at something, that's okay. You know, go ahead, sorry.
No, it's okay. How much time do I have?
Not very long.
Okay.
We're at 4:10, 4:11.
Okay.
You got 20 minutes.
Okay. Oh, 20 minutes. Okay, cool.
We're doing good.
So I will tell this last story. So this is a sad story, but I tell it because it's just an example of this that I will never forget. So in the job that I had at the newspaper, I had to write a lot of really sad stories, which was not always fun. But the way I mean, it was never fun, let's be honest. But the way that I always thought about it was, what can I do as a storyteller to create something for this family that has lost somebody that they can hold on to, that they can have, that is a fitting tribute to this person that was lost. So I got told I needed to write this story about a little boy that died really suddenly, really young. It was awful. And, you know, I get the dad on the phone and I'm asking him to tell me about his son. And, you know, no one knows what to say. I mean, how could you know what to say? But he just kind of blurted out, like, all of a sudden, like he loved Starbursts. That was his favorite candy, was Starbursts. And I put that at the top of my story. And I got more comments from people coming up to me and saying, hey, like, that story, like, you made that situation a human situation. And I think just that little detail, just that little ability to paint that picture, like, change that story from like a news brief that would have been, you know, just kind of a news item to something that family has probably got in a scrapbook somewhere. So like, the words we choose not only can make our writing shorter and more powerful, but it can really elevate the things we're writing and make them things that humanize the people that we support. And I think the awesome thing is that, you know, this is built into our process, right? Like, we are observing, we are collecting, we are talking to people. Like, we have all the things we need to do to show the stuff that we want to show. It's already built into the process. And I think the cool thing is we get to use this for the really exciting stuff. Like Lisa said, like, you know, best day on the job. What does it look like for them? Or like, you got an award at work. Oh my gosh, like, tell me all about it. Why'd you get the award? Like, you know, so we can show that kind of stuff, which is a lot more fun than, you know, John works at Wendy's and he does this and he does this and he does, which, like, that's important, but we can show that instead of just telling people. But I think it also can be really helpful when we talk about challenges. One of the SSAs who I talked to for this presentation, she wrote in somebody's plan, she told this story about the person, and they went out for a walk and they got lost. And so they were kind of walking a country road, and they just had this idea that someone was going to come along and find them. Like, they didn't have a concept that was maybe a situation they needed to get themselves out of, or ask somebody for, like, they just were like, oh, well, someone's going to come. And I think that you know, we could write that. We could tell people that, right? We could tell that like, oh, this person has no sense of direction, or this person can't, you know, go for a walk alone because they get lost, or this person has no sense of their own safety and, you know, they're going to just we can't deal with this. But instead, we talked about a really specific situation and we showed what the challenge was. And I think not only does that give you a lot more clarity, but I think it also just, you know, it's not making it seem like this person committed this, you know, I've told a story about a bad thing that happened, but like, it's just a human story. Like we can kind of just go from there.
They're a wanderer. That's always a good one. They escape.
They elope. They elope.
They're an eloper.
So Lisa and I joke about this because she has a really interesting way of talking about follow-up as well. But FOLO is an old like journalism slang that I learned in college, which just means like follow, like FOLLOW. So that's what this means. But the follow-up is a really big part of the journalistic process because everything is so question-based, right? So I write an article, goes to my editor, goes to my copy editors. My coworkers might take a look at it. Maybe they have questions for me. You know, it's a very question-based process. And that all happens before anything you write goes out in the public, because then you get the phone calls and the emails asking the questions like, what about this? What about me? Did you know about this story? Did you know that that person's actually a big jerk? Which that's always really fun to figure out. But, you know, most articles that I would write aren't a one and done process. Like there was usually some follow-up that I needed to do. And honestly, some of the best stories, the ways that I was able to tell people stories that people connected with, they wanted to know. They wanted to know, oh, did she have her surgery? Is she okay? You know, I heard that we raised all this money for this dog to get a wheelchair. And did he get the wheelchair? And he did get the wheelchair. But so I think we just having that mindset that you're not done, and that like a good story, you know, a great ISP is never really done, and that's okay, because we're snapshotting where people are. I mean, if you looked at my ISP in 2019 and then you looked at my ISP now, holy cow, like those snapshots are very different. So I think it's important to make sure that everything is clear and factual and true and human, but I don't think perfection is ever something that we need to worry about, because we're all people and it's just a snapshot.
So just in case any of you don't know the joke, when I say follow up, it says F/U.
And the first time I saw it, I was like, what is going on? Like, who is this?
If you get an email from me that says
follow up
F/U, please, I mean,
follow up.
Okay? Licking County has let the entire state know that I do it on a regular basis. So, okay.
But we love it. So I think this fun one was you guys. So please elaborate on our awesome photo illustration here. Love it.
Yeah, that was me. Sorry. No, I just always say that I love to read an assessment in an ISP that feels like I've just read a really good story. It should tell the story. It should build just like a story does, right? I always think about the outcomes and the services are kind of like the high point. We know what we need to do. The one thing that you want to watch out for, though, is we are writing more of like a Hallmark movie and not a mystery kind of thriller. I don't want to be surprised when I read an ISP. So just wanted to throw that out there, because I will say that as somebody who looks at them somewhat regularly, we don't like to be surprised. I don't want to get to the end of the plan and find out that the person, you know, has a serious choking risk and we never saw it anywhere else. So there you go.
In journalism, that's called burying the lead. So you put like the most important like surprise at the bottom, and then it's like, oh no, that goes up here.
So I wanted to mention something. How many of you guys this morning attended the keynote speaker? Okay. Do you guys remember the slide where she introduced herself with her names? It told us a lot, didn't it? Her names, you could see the different iterations of them, who called her what. And then she went on to say she's part of the Marvel universe. And I couldn't help myself. I was like, Oh my God, we're related. I too am a part of the Marvel universe. And I felt like I knew her. She did not use a lot of words on the screen to convey that. And yet she conveyed so much information. So I just want to say that, yeah, we can't say more with less, but we can make what we say more powerful and more meaningful if it's important. Sometimes we do add a little more. I did want to comment on factual, okay? Occasionally we struggle with when to put in factual negative information, okay? And it's okay to say someone is struggling with pedophilia, and because they might be, if struggling is the word that might fit. But just state it factually, diagnosed with pedophilia, we get it. We don't have to go on unless there are some interventions that we need to do. A lot of people don't want that in their plan. We get it. I wouldn't want all my negatives to be in my plan, but I want the ones that people who need to support me, I want them to know about that, because I really don't want to go to jail. Orange is not my new black, okay? I don't want to be in that jumpsuit. So that's my plan. So I need you to write that down and tell the DSPs in my life that that's something I don't want, okay? And it's okay to put that in there. Occasionally, guardians kind of really raise holy heck with you putting in negative factual information about their loved one. That's another thing. You're the author. If it's imperative that the DSP know that information, if it's going to prevent harm or injury to themselves or others, you need to put it in the plan. And you can say it factually. This happened once at this point in time, and we want to make you aware. But we don't have to go into this long diatribe about maybe our feelings about it or anyone's feelings at the time. But we're just going to state it factually, because that's important. I want you to keep me healthy and safe at a minimum, and then I also want to go on and live a good life.
So I think that's all we had prepared. Our contact information is here. I know I like to nerd out about this kind of stuff. So if anyone else wants to nerd out about writing and storytelling with me, please feel free to text me or send me an email or give me a call. But unless you guys have anything else, we can take questions.
Let's take questions.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna go find people. Questions. Oh, you're gonna do it. Go.
I'm
for
gonna
it.
run. I want to.
You can do that side, Lisa.
Okay, so I have an individual that to get him to the plan pretty much requires his mother to grab him by the ear and set him down, right? He hates every part of this process. He's the guy that went to a job interview because we're trying to get him a job. He really is, it's in his field. He's in accounting and bookkeeping. And he told the director of this company that, you know, I see it's a non-smoking facility. So why the hell do you have a ashtray on your desk? Like, this is my guy, right? So
it's a good question, but yeah.
It wasn't, you know, his questions are right on track, but you know, so, and he will not work with the public at all. Like, no. So my question, and I tell you what, I have tried, I got 30 years in working with people, and I've tried every skill I can pull out of my butt to get this guy to answer my questions. And his mom is somebody who does not enable, you know, she's like, answer her, you know, you're being rude and like all this stuff. And he'll just like do everything but, right? So what advice do you have? Like, it is really hard for me to write a plan for this guy. I've talked to the providers and the, you know, the job coach and stuff. So I know him, right? Like in it, but to write his services and his plan and things of, you know, like I put like that lady this morning, I think her thing on the page was like her front page of her ISP. And, you know, I take all kinds of fun things from the internet or pictures they've submitted and put that on their plan. But this guy, I'm just struggling. I need some ideas on what y'all, if anybody has somebody like that,
All right,
help.
let's see.
I have one for you. Okay, so an individual who doesn't want to talk to you, will he write you a note about 5 things he likes? Do you have to sit there in front of him? Can you get some, you said his job coach tells you some things about him. Collect that information, ask them about him. Tell them, hey, if you don't want to sit here, that's okay. I'm gonna ask these guys, okay? Make sure you tell them. Okay, right, but we're gonna ask him to write a few things down. If there's something he enjoys doing, some fun activity, do it with him. I mean, throwing axes is cool. I mean, seriously, don't throw too hard. They pop back. Found out the hard way. Uh-oh. That's what happened. No, my axe came back. But other than that.
She's going off that, yeah.
But those are some things that you could do. You can think of different, you've tried a lot of things, but now have him write it down. He doesn't want to sit. I know you don't want to sit there, but here's a couple things I need you to answer for me. Sit with your mom and talk to her about it and have her write those things down.
Could you Zoom with him?
Nope, can't make you.
Would he Zoom? Would he like that more? Okay, I was gonna say, we have people that we work with that their anxiety is so bad when they meet in person, but then in Zoom, it's like a completely different, like being in front of that screen is like, lets them release for some reason.
Well, I'm gonna say something that's probably a little obvious. Not everybody wants to be disabled.
Yeah.
They just don't want to have a problem that I gotta have you in my life to work with.
Yeah. So what does he want from
That's
you?
a good question. And I've asked him that. He's like,
what does he need help with? What kind of services are you looking at?
he wants
I think looking for a job, right?
He wants a new job.
So the question is, what do you want your employer to know? What are the 3 most important things for your employer to know about you? Number 1, right? Like those need to be very much in his plan because. Okay, I'm really good working on my own.
Well, not lately. I mean, a lot of us are working from home, so I'm finding that I work with dogs.
I have found with people that don't want to attend meetings and don't want to talk to people about their plans or that have the capacity to do it, which it sounds like he does. I mean, that it's usually because of the things that are being discussed at the meetings. It's usually because they see no point in it. They're not getting what they need. So it's really important to identify like, what's he going to get out of that? And what I'm going to tell you, my number 1 thing is taking walks with people and driving in a car with a person. And I know you might not be allowed to, so I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying that. But let me tell you, men will talk in the car while you are taking them someplace they want to go. They might not ever talk. They don't want to a lot of times, I mean, my guys, they don't want to sit face to face. They don't want a table around them. Maybe they want to take a walk around the block. Maybe they want to get in the car. Maybe you are at wherever their event is or something that they enjoy. It could be a dinner thing. It could be at bowling. It could be at whatever. And you're just there watching and they realize that you really care. Like that's how I get people to talk to me and not ever in a meeting. I mean, it's like that's sometimes the goal, the outcome is that you actually want to be part of your meeting. But I hate the idea that people have to attend a meeting. And I know Kelly and I share that. It's not about the meeting, right? You can get information from him over here. You can get information from mom over here. You can get information from the job coach there. And then you're the plan author and you're going to make that in the most respectful way. So I would never, forcing somebody to sit down at a table is scary. It's very scary. And somebody online asked the same question. Any ideas how to convince someone to open up who might be closed off?
I think when people are closed off, let's make sure we understand that maybe there's been some trauma or trust issues. I mean, that that's a large part about, I don't trust you. We came from a system of, if people told us what they love the most, then we use that to motivate them to do what we want. And we have a long history of that. So now that we really want to hear what they have to say, I don't trust you is a good answer, right? And so we have to build that rapport and relationship with people. And sometimes it is spending a little more time with that person, just asking random stuff or doing
Sharing about
something
yourself.
together. Exactly.
Sorry.
It's all right. Anna's going to wrap it up because we're at 4:29.
Oh, no,
People
you're
are
fine.
amazing.
For better or worse, I am really bad at eye contact, but I think sometimes for me, that's actually been helpful because I can look like I'm taking notes or, well, I am taking notes usually, but sometimes like just not like me, not like staring down the barrel of their face, like helps. I think also just kind of being comfortable with the silence that it takes for people to collect their thoughts or maybe think about things, I think is really important. But yeah, it is. I know sometimes like you just don't get a ton, but then I think that's when I would always lean on what's around, like what are they doing with their body language? What, you know, if it's a little kid and they don't want to talk to you, a lot of kids don't want to be interviewed. That's really not very fun. But I can see what they're doing with their smile, and I can see what they're like, what activity at a community event they're going toward. And it's like, well, obviously this is the event that the kids love the best because they're all there. So I think just focusing on kind of those nonverbal cues and things are helpful too. But yeah, just trying to be as like unobtrusive, like to be like just as quiet and as observant as possible. And hopefully then they kind of settle in to what they need to say.
Kelly really wants to.
I so badly want to say something.
You can see we really have a hard time opening up.
I know, right? No, real quick, all I want to say is perhaps maybe too, we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we are trying to get from this person and do we actually need it? Because we are used to thinking that we need to know absolutely everything about everybody's life and it drives us crazy when they won't tell us. And maybe that's not the situation here and that's totally fine. But point is, we got a lot of questions you could ask. Maybe if somebody's not opening up, there's a reason, and maybe we don't have to go there. So I just want to throw that out there as an alternative, because quite honestly, kind of turns into a fun game if you keep asking me and I don't tell you. So just saying.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. If anybody